Yesterday was all about detainees and what the Labor government was trying to do. There was emergency legislation, essentially. They were trying to rush through Parliament, but in the end, the coalition would not agree. So Parliament has risen and will not return until the budget. Joining me now is the Environment and Water Minister Tanya Plibersek. Tanya, thanks so much for your time. First of all, I just wanted to ask you about Alice Springs. I mean, the national media is focusing on Alice Springs once again, but for the last couple of months, even longer than a year, the violence has been as bad as ever. And it's culminated in these riots in the last couple of days. And that's after the death of a young man in a stolen vehicle. What are the long-term solutions that people are talking about here?
Well, of course, we support the Northern Territory Government in the immediate action they've taken to introduce a curfew over the next couple of weeks as a circuit breaker. We think that's important to have that period to calm things down. But you're quite right, Laura. I mean, this is a longer term issue that we've got. When we came to government, the previous government had just set in train a cutting of about $250 million of supports for Central Australia. We, of course, restored that funding to domestic and family violence services, for example. We've committed extra funding for police, for DV services, to work with the council on security upgrades. But we need to address these longer term issues. These things haven't sprung up overnight. That's why recently we announced $4 billion extra investment in housing to deal with some of the overcrowding issues that really have contributed to kids being out on the street at night when they should be home, asleep, in bed. We've also worked with the Northern Territory Government to put $1 billion into the Northern Territory education system, because we know kids don't, start getting into trouble the day they turn 16. They're on a trajectory to getting into trouble from a very early age. We need to invest early to make sure kids are at home in bed at night, and during the day they're in classrooms learning so that they're ready for the world, job ready for further education, all of the things that we want for those children.
These announcements are welcome and the money is super important, but what seems to happen is that you have these announcements, there seems to be a little bit of reprieve on the ground, but there's a problem with that money actually translating into service delivery that's fit for purpose. The domestic violence example is a good example of that, and there's just not enough resources on the ground.
Well, there's not enough resources on the ground, and it's about making sure that the commitment is a lasting commitment. Like, as I said, we came into government facing $250 million of cuts to services in Central Australia. We had to quickly find that money to restore those services that would have otherwise fallen over. When you're talking about hiring police or hiring workers to work in domestic violence, or even hiring teachers or early childhood educators, you've got to make sure that the funding is there across multiple years to make sure that those services are going to keep going. And that's why the housing investment and the education investment are so important. These are multiple year commitments from the Commonwealth Government in partnership with the Northern Territory Government, so that we've got longer term solutions.
We can't entirely let the Territory Government off the hook here. I mean, some of these incidents should never have been allowed to happen. And I think there is some truth to the fact that, this is not in a major city. It's out of the public eye, mainly if it wasn't for reporters like Matt Cunningham.
Yeah, look, I think it's obviously true that Alice Springs is going through a particularly difficult time at the moment, and the local member there, Marion Scrimgeour, is on the ground there talking to people, working with community leaders to settle things down and make sure that kids are at home in bed when they should be at home in bed, or in school during the day when they should be in school. Marion understands the needs of the local community and is absolutely committed to bringing together all three levels of government, the Territory Government with the Commonwealth, with the local government in Alice Springs and in surrounding communities. The commitment has to be a long-term commitment, and I think Marion better understands than most people what's required.